Hi, everyone. Welcome. Happy Friday. Thank you for coming to our Maintaining Wellness in the Service panel. My name is Molly. I am the Service Year Advisor for City of Los Angeles. And today we have an amazing panel of AmeriCorps members and staff members who are also alumni joining us today. Thank you to our attendees, and thank you to everyone watching for being here. Our theme for March has been all about benefits of serving with City Year, from the experience itself to our health benefits and career. So if you haven't watched the benefits video from the March newsletter, I definitely encourage you to check it out. Yeah, today we are going to be speaking about wellness and service. And I'm going to go over and pass it to our panelists to introduce themselves. Go ahead and share like your name, your position. If you're currently serving, would love to know where you serve. And if you are on staff, would love to know where and when you served. Who would like to start us off?
I can start us off. My name's Ava, she, her, hers, and I am a currently serving Corps member at Ascot Avenue Elementary in South Central Los Angeles, and I work with a 5th grade classroom. That's all, I think, there? Okay.
Go next. Oh, sorry, Kiana. Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Murillo. I am pronounced she, her, hers, and I'm currently the Corps Operations Manager for City Year Los Angeles. I'm almost done with my 5th year of City Year, and I did 2 years of as a Corps member. My first year I served in New York in 2017, and my second year I came back to Los Angeles and I served at a high school in Westlake. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Hi everyone, Kiana, she, hers. I currently sit on staff as a recruiter, but I am an alum of City Year Los Angeles, and so I served at Gompers Middle School in Watts from 2016 to 2017.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. So before we dive right into our questions, I do want to just clarify a bit how we're going to define like our terms today, like wellness and self-care. By wellness, we really mean like your health and well-being, like physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, like relationally. Wellness really permeates like all aspects of our lives, right? And that's why it's important to talk about. This conversation is not a set of like how-to instructions for how to like be well and then like maintain that all through service. We know there are going to be ups and downs. Like this conversation is about like navigating those ups and downs, and like self-care like tools or practices, whether it is self-care or like self-preservation or like self-soothing. Those different topics might come up, and they have their benefits when and wherever we see fit as we like navigate the journey of our individual lives. We'll be sharing about our experiences, some tips and advice, but also just keep in mind that we encourage you to learn what works best for you, trust your experience, and just really hope you find value in hearing perspectives from folks who have served or are currently serving. If there are like places where we want to explore like deeper, like we have a Slack channel and we can explore those topics there as well if we don't get to everything today. Okay, so with that, we have some prepared questions for folks who are on the call. Like, feel free to post your questions later in the Q&A. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and ask our first question, which is, in your experience, how has City Year shown that AmeriCorps members are valued just as full human beings while serving? Who wants to kick us off? Mary, I think you're on mute.
I thought the space bar unmuted me, and I don't know, maybe it's not a feature anymore. I can start us off. I'm also currently serving as the wellness coordinator lead. So at City Year LA, we have different like coordinator roles that focus on different areas of service. And so I'm currently, this is the first year that we're doing the program, but something that we're really trying to push and things that have been added throughout the years, because as a response to concerns from core members has just been like more benefits. So like, I think if you've talked about benefits already, like talks-based benefits or like other like text counseling benefits, things that are either self-guided or it's like you talk to someone. So I feel like that's definitely been improved over the years, and things have been continuously added, and like we're still looking into what else could be beneficial to support our core throughout the year, because it is a year of service and it can get challenging. But also, I think generally the people at City Year really do care about their own people at City Year. And so I feel like generally all program managers have been hopefully open to core members like taking any time off that they might need, or if they need like appointment time to go see like consistent therapy. That's, I think, we're just trying to destigmatize conversations around mental health and really just talking about it and trying to have core members prioritize it. So I just feel like that's kind of something that we've been trying to improve as a site here in Los Angeles, and that I think we really try to encourage. Ultimately, it is up to the person to reach out for help and like really try to get the support that they need. But we really try to make sure that everyone has the resources that they need to get that support.
I can go next, and I would just add, it's really interesting, Mary, to hear your perspective coming more from like an institutional staff perspective rather than, you know, like my lived experience as a core member. I think City Year definitely does care about us as whole human beings, and the way I see this kind of on a day-to-day level is these check-ins called PIES check-ins that my program manager, who is the manager who's at school with me every day, does bi-weekly. So PI stands for physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And it's just an opportunity both for me to reflect and then to be honest with him if I'm facing any challenges or need any supports. And I really appreciate that. Maybe on a more institutional level, I've really seen how City Year values core member feedback. You know, like Mary was saying, a lot of these wellness things have been implemented because of core member feedback, and I can certainly speak to, you know, getting surveys all the time asking how was this professional development day, or, you know, what do you think about our COVID rules? You know, it really feels like my voice is valued and heard, and I appreciate that. I think that definitely leads to better well-being.
Anything else you want to add, Kiana?
Honestly, no. I feel like between like Mary and Ava, they both kind of covered it. So I just kind of like echo those same sentiments.
Awesome. Let's see. And so we talk about, or at least we ask about it when all of our candidates are interviewed now about their self-care practice, but I want to acknowledge that, of course, that could change and like adapt once you actually like begin serving. So the next question is, you know, when you began serving with City Year, how did your understanding of self-care or self-care practice like change or develop once you like got going with service?
I can jump in first for this one. I think for myself as a core member before coming into City Year, I was very unfamiliar with self-care. I feel like just like going throughout high school and college, I was just like go all the time and put myself very last. So I never actually took time to like do any form of self-care, let alone ever learn what the term was. And so I think when I came into my core year is when like I really encountered what the official term was. And my program manager was very specific about like making sure that there was time to self-care, and like we would all have like our little self-care brainstorming sessions to at least be like, okay, what are you doing when you go home? to self-care, and like how are you spending your weekends and things like that, so that way you are self-caring. And I think since I have served in the Corps, then it's definitely become like a mantra almost in my mind, where I'm constantly mentioning it to other people and trying to figure out like what my different forms of self-care are, and actually practicing those and realizing how much more of like a positive headspace that it provides me when I actually self-care, instead of just like going on and on. So it kind of just, I always think of that term, like you can't pour from an empty cup. And so you definitely kind of have to like take the time for yourself and kind of refill yourself before you can do anything else, especially when you're doing the work of a Corps member like Ava and trying to give so much to your students too.
Yeah, so I think for me, my definition of self-care, it changed kind of in two ways. I guess first, before serving, I thought self-care was more about like bubble baths or like getting a massage, like all of these kind of very elaborate things. And, after serving for like 7 or 8 months, I think now I have a better understanding of it as making a really nice meal, or, like watching Netflix after I'm stressed for a night. Like stuff that is more feasible in your day-to-day life that you can incorporate into a routine. I think another thing that City really has shown me about self-care is kind of the aspect of community care. So, like when you're nurtured by your community, or when you're nurturing your community, that can also impact kind of how you're feeling about yourself. And I see that, on my team, after this panel, we're having a team lunch. We're all going to check in and have that meal together and have that kind of care for the community, for each other. And I really appreciate that.
I think similar to Ava, it kind of, there was a shift between like, yeah, doing things kind of like whenever I wanted, or just like, and it to a shift to incorporating things. So like for me, I think the biggest thing was like using my commute. Like I would take the bus to service, and I felt like that was really important time for me. One, I was like usually rushing out the door, but like, and that's when like I ate my breakfast. Was like I was usually eating my breakfast on the bus. But more importantly, I would just be like listening to like music that really just kind of like set me up and like put me in a good mood for the day. It is really early. I'm not a morning person, and so like that small like thing, and like really taking the time to like do something that I was going to enjoy, or like listen to a podcast I was really into, or just like watch like an episode of something on my phone on my way to service was really important to me. But another thing that I would say is using like planning periods or any like little breaks throughout the day to, again, like do some incorporative like self-care practices. It depends on how your school is set up, but sometimes like you're just spending your entire day in like a room with maybe like your team, and sometimes like you could get tired of them, and or maybe sometimes you just need some time by yourself. And so just like using free time that you have throughout the day, or maybe like your lunch, to like take a walk instead, or go eat lunch somewhere else, or have lunch with someone that you might not usually have lunch with. I know some members of my team, like if they skateboarded, they would like go and skateboard on their lunch, or just walk to like the corner store. Some of them just like took a 5-minute nap in their car. Just like trying to incorporate things throughout the day that kind of like support how you're feeling. If like we've been trying to encourage more like meditation. We do have like a partnership with a meditation app that's like free for Corps members and staff members. So just like really doing that. And also I think after service was also prime time for me to just like do what I wanted. And sometimes I would just like go have dinner by myself somewhere, because I lived with citier people. And like that could also, be a little bit tiring sometimes, because everyone's kind of going through the same experience. And sometimes people are just like venting. But I really just like was able to take the time after service and just like go to Chipotle and have like my dinner by myself. Or maybe like go, like, I don't really work out, but maybe like go like on a walk. So yeah, I think just utilizing my free time to prioritize myself, to make sure that, again, like Kiana said, like you're not pouring from an empty cup, because it can be pretty taxing.
Awesome. Yeah, and thanks, Mary, for kind of like getting into our next question by sharing like some of your like self-care practices that you did in the Corps. So our next question is like, what are like your top like 1 to 3? It depends, but what are your top self-care practices that you think have like the most like impact on like on like your service year, like if you served or like as you're currently serving?
I can go first for this one. So my number one, like by far, this is the most impactful self-care practice is getting enough sleep. Because with city year, you have to wake up early in the morning. School starts at 7:50, and you need to be there. Well, for my team, I need to be there at 7:15. So just getting enough sleep the night before, like I try to go to bed around 9:30 at the very latest, so I can have at least 7 or 8 hours. Um, has been really helpful because you can't function if you don't have enough sleep, and then you're negatively impacting your students or all of that. Another self-care practice I find really helpful is I try to go to the farmers market. They're pretty accessible for people who are on CalFresh. So I know City Year provides an application for CalFresh or like application support. I use that, and you can get a lot of discounts going to a farmer's market, and the food is just so much better. It's on the weekends. There's no excuse not to do it. And that can really, brighten up the rest of your week.
I can go next. I think now for self-care for myself, it's like doing something active and typically outdoors if I can. And or like I love just taking time to like watch a good show or something, or like read nonfiction novels and just get lost in whatever's not the real world. So I think that's self-care for me now. But I think as a core member, it was definitely coming home and eating pretzel chips and Nutella. That was not the healthiest choice, but it definitely was my self-care that I had. And I think I lived with one other teammate of mine. And so some days when we had really hard weeks and it was a Friday, we would like look at each other and we already knew like we were going to get Popeyes on the way home, like get some Ben and Jerry's ice cream and just watch a good movie for the night. And like that was our form of just like kind of self-caring and kind of coming down from what the week was too.
Oh, I guess I kind of shared some already, but yeah, I think using my commute and just like, I feel like your commute is a really important transition between like when is your time and when's like service. And I think that could just be really useful to make use of that time. So like coming home too, I would just do some, like if I was frustrated from the day, like music or a podcast or a show, like definitely helped me transition back home. So just like using my commute to like do things that I really liked. I would also agree with Ava, like sleep. I have always been a night owl, but like when I was in service, I really was like, I can't keep up with this lifestyle. So I have to like start going to sleep earlier. And like, I definitely did. And it just helped. It just, yeah, made me so much more energized in the morning, even though I was never a morning person. It just like getting enough sleep is always just really important and is going to set you up for success. And then I really like playing like board games. So like that's not really self-care. It was more of like team fun, like where it was just like, we're not thinking about service, we're doing something together. But that was always really important to our team, was just like spending time to do things that aren't related to service, that are potentially being frustrating at the time, or, it can just get really hard. So I just feel like playing games as teams kind of also ties into like that community care and just like doing things together and caring for each other in a different way and just like having fun.
Awesome. Thanks y'all for sharing. Would definitely double click finding time in the day to listen to your guilty pleasure motivational music. My core years were the only time that I have ever listened to Justin Bieber, and that should tell you something. Riley asked a great, I think like relevant question for like this point in our conversation. So we talk about, our day-to-day self-care practices, after a challenging week. And Riley is curious to know like what a hard week typically can look like for a core member. So I would love to pose it to y'all of like what were some like challenges you could face on a hard week, and maybe like what are some self-care practices that end up helping, or like is there anything you wish you would have tried at that time? I'd love to open it up to chat about that.
I can also take this one first. So for me, I don't really think of things in terms of like hard weeks, but maybe in terms of like a hard day within a week. And I think I find hard days difficult usually when, you know, a student maybe isn't responding to the academic coaching I'm providing, you know, because sometimes it doesn't work, and, you know, that's not a nice feeling. Or if I have to stay late because a student's parents isn't picking them up from ELT or our after school program, because we are an elementary school, so students can't like go home on their own. And kind of on those days, what I do is I give myself grace to order food once a week, you know, from a restaurant that I want to eat at. And just not having to cook is so nice. Not having to do the dishes, so nice. And then maybe like watching some Netflix.
I would, yeah, 100%. I feel like it really sometimes just depends on how things are going in service. Like definitely students can make things a little bit more difficult. Like Ava said, if they're not responding to it. Sometimes I worked at a high school, so like for me, it was just like I had to try to get them to even come to class because they would be ditching, and sometimes they like cuss me out, but they'd just be like no, I'm not going to class, miss, and just like no. And I was like, dang it. Like I obviously like we want to support them, and if they're missing out on class time, like that's going to set them behind. So just like things like that can make it really hard and feel a little bit defeating at the end of a day, or even at the end of the week, if it's like something that keeps happening, can really lead to like, yeah, just some burnout also. But I think Ava really highlighted a really important point, which is something that I've tried to really push wellness coordinators to like start implementing, which is like, yes, giving yourself grace. Like a lot of that is not on you, like you're trying your best. And I feel like sometimes we forget about that, and we just feel like, oh, well, I'm just not doing my job, or I'm not like getting my time with my students. I didn't do a tutoring session with the student. But you know, I feel like sometimes we just forget that all we can do is try our best. And also just like practicing gratitude, like, and being grateful for the things that like were successful, can really help during those really difficult moments, because you'll always have moments like that, but you'll also always have successes, and like really celebrating small victories can really make a big impact. Like a student making some progress, or a student showing up to class maybe like one time this week, can be something that you can like celebrate, because even though it's small, it can feel really big for you and also for that student. So I feel like that is a lot. Also, just sometimes long days just get to you. Like you're just serving for like, you know, from like 7 to sometimes like 5, 6, depending on like ELT programs and how late those go. So sometimes just like the impact of like that can make it a difficult week, in which case I like really just try to prioritize rest and sleep.
Can I add one more thing that you actually made me think of, Mary? So especially in relation to like student things, when maybe academic stuff isn't going so well with them, or your connection isn't going so well. My program manager encouraged everyone on my team to do this at the beginning of the year, and it really is awesome. So students will give you a ton of art, or like just little notes like, oh, like, miss, you're the best, or like, thanks for helping me. Like my student yesterday gave me this, you know, it's like, love yourself, like something cute like that. And having a collection of that you can look back on when things are rough kind of with your students, kind of centers you in, you know, your purpose, why you're doing this, and makes things a lot easier, I would say.
That's a really good idea. Shout out to your program manager for mentioning that, because those notes and stuff really do help to kind of like bring you back. But I think, yeah, just like kind of double clicking, echoing on a lot of those same sentiments. I definitely think that there's more hard days per se than like a full hard week. But I think kind of like similar situations, just sometimes students just, you know, they're not showing up to class, or they definitely just don't feel like working with you today, or, you know, you weren't as successful at teaching them how to divide fractions that day as you were hoping to be. And, you know, sometimes those can be more frustrating or like harder days. I know in particular, I had a lot of students that had family members pass away, I feel like, during my service year. And I feel like sometimes those were hard days because I knew that they were struggling. So then I was trying to, you know, be kind of like a mentor for them and be there so that they can talk about how they're feeling. But at the same time, it was like, how do you balance the fact that like they're upset, but also you need to learn math, but like let's set aside math for a second so you can kind of talk about how you're feeling. And so I think sometimes like trying to balance those things, and you get pretty close with your students, like you build very close relationships with them. And I think that sometimes too, like whatever they're kind of carrying on their shoulders, you take on yourself too. And so sometimes that in a way can become hard. For some, maybe in a sense, it could be defined as hard. For others, it might just feel like weighing or just something else that's kind of on your mind, depending on how you might, word that or see that. But ultimately, I think that like, yeah, keeping those notes and kind of just like keeping different kind of like that positive mindset and doing smaller forms of self-care, right? So like those things that we mentioned definitely work, if it is listening to a music or a podcast or just treating yourself to dinner or being home and just being able to be in quiet, maybe, or be in a room by yourself. I had a few days where I would just come home and I would immediately like go to bed. And that's just what I needed for that day, even if it wasn't a hard day per se, but it was just like, I want to sleep. So I think all of those things that everyone kind of mentioned, it varies for, what different core members experience, but then ultimately just kind of figuring out what's going to help you kind of come back and resettle. And as long as you can do that, you'll be good.
Thanks, y'all. Yeah, love what you said, Kiana, about like trying to like work towards like that balance, right? Of like maintaining that kind of self-care, knowing that like there are going to be challenges that are specific that come from different places, but sometimes it's just a challenge of the day-to-day for just that natural environment of like working with students and team and like just like balancing different like responsibilities. With that, like, are there any like self-care practices that y'all have been tempted to like try out or like test, knowing that in order for us to like continue like a good self-care practice, we have to kind of stretch and like try new things and experiment a little?
I mean, this is, I think, something that people forget to do during service sometimes, which I consider to be self-care, is especially if you have a city insurance, is like taking the time to like go to that routine eye exam or to go to like a dental cleaning and like taking the time to actually do that. One, because it's like available to you, and two, it's like you're taking the time to take care of yourself, even though it might not feel like self-care, or if you like don't like the dentist or don't like going to these appointments, like if it's something that your body needs and like you need, taking the time to actually schedule those appointments and attend them can be really important. I, in my 2 years of city year, had the city year insurance and like didn't go to the doctor when I probably should have, just because didn't prioritize that for myself. So I definitely feel like I could have been a lot better with that. I also what Ava mentioned, like farmers markets, never took advantage of that. And I think I could have benefited a lot. There's also some of the farmers markets have like dollar match programs where if you go and you spend like, you're like, I'm going to commit to spending, I don't know, $40 at this farmers market, they'll give you like $40 free dollars and you just like double your money, or yeah, like $20 match up to $20. Yeah, and they'll just like give you extra money and you just like have that to like spend and like buy whatever you want. And like Ava said, it's probably healthier than what you could buy at a grocery store. But yeah, I would say like those are the two things that I wish I would have done during my service here that I think would have been really beneficial. Also therapy.
Yeah, I think, Mary, this is why you're our wellness coordinator point and lead, because you think of all these things. Yeah, no, I definitely think like during my core year, doing something like, even if it would have been meditating or like using the Headspace app or yoga or therapy or something along those lines, I didn't do any of that. And I feel like doing some sort of mindfulness, something probably would have been really beneficial. So I think that that's probably like the main thing that I can think of. But I also think too, being able to like be around people. I know not everybody's an extrovert, but I think a lot of times during my core year, I would immediately go home and like isolate myself. And I feel like sometimes that wasn't the best decision, and it probably would have been a good thing to kind of like be around other people for a little bit, or like purposely go out and hang out with some other folks on the weekend and stuff. And I mean, I feel like I did it as in my core year, but I probably could have done it a little more just to kind of, I don't know, I guess kind of get that energy off from other people, but also not everyone's like that. Sometimes you re-energize by being by yourself. So I guess that can kind of go both ways, like spending less time with people maybe, and or spending more time with people, depending on how you get your energy.
For me, I guess I'll keep it short and sweet. I really want to try exercising more. I'd love to do yoga or go hiking on the weekends when I have time. You know, I think what like endorphins or dopamine, whatever it helps with, could be really beneficial.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember when I served, I wished I could have been someone who like works out in the morning before they went to campus every day. However, sometimes it didn't happen, but sometimes I would run to catch the bus and I still got that wave of like endorphins from like just a little bit of exercise. So it's not fun in the moment. It's something. Okay, we did kind of like lean into our next question of like tips and like advice or things that we like wish we took advantage of when we were serving. Is there anything else we want to add? Like, are there any other like pieces of advice we wish we could have given ourselves when we served? Or like Ava, for you serving, like, is there any other like tip that you think could be worth like trying out for some of our folks, knowing there's no one solution, but just to give like suggestions or ideas?
Like I said, I would say keeping all the notes you get from your students is so gratifying to look back on. Even now, I'm sure in like 5 years, it's going to be even cooler. My other tip would be just be open and communicate your needs, even if it feels really hard in the moment. I found that Cydia is a super understanding organization, both kind of in the team level and then in the institutional level. Like if your needs are not being met, they'll work to address that. And it feels nice to know that they're in my corner.
Yeah, I would kind of going off what Ava said, I think something that I've learned a little bit more being like the wellness coordinator lead and hearing from like my coordinators who, you know, are serving in their own teams is like, we can give all the resources in the world, but it's really up to the person to take advantage of them. And sometimes we don't know how to ask for help, or maybe we're like scared to ask for help, or like don't want to admit that we're having a challenging day, or don't want to let anyone in. And like, I think that just makes it harder on yourself. And also like, it sucks for your team to like not know what you're going through. And I feel like your team is like readily available to support you and like really give you the help that you need, or direct you to the resource, or connect you to who can like give you that. So I just feel like the biggest takeaway and thing that I'm learning right now in terms of like self-care and like taking care of your mental health during your service year is really advocating for yourself and being proactive when you're like not doing well, or when you do need support, either whether that be like, I just need to talk to my PM, like just to vent a little bit, or I just need to like, I'm not sure how to find a therapist, like let me ask someone for support. Or if it's something as simple as like, hey, how do you sign up for this meditation app that like that we have access to for free? But just really being self-aware and knowing and letting people know when you're struggling, because we wouldn't want you to suffer in silence, but also if you aren't really reaching out for help, it's hard for other people to help you. And so I mean, self-care, like self is in the word, like it is up to you to, you know, like take care of yourself and like find or like try to ask for the support that you need. Obviously, like Amy said, that we try to create communities of care and like really show each other that we want to check in with people. But again, if you can't get help, or you can't get support if you don't let someone that's something that you need. So I would say like that's the biggest thing. Like, don't be afraid to ask for help. We really encourage and appreciate vulnerability. I feel like we have a very empathetic Corps and also like program managers that are willing to hear you out and support you in whatever way you can, as long as you're willing to ask for it.
What else can you add after all those great things? I think if I could add anything else, just like emphasizing, yes, use those resources and really don't bottle like things in, because I feel it just comes out later on and it's not helpful to you or your team or your students. But I think too, like if one other piece of advice I would just say is not being afraid to say no. And so if that's like saying no to doing an extra thing or adding on like a specific task, or maybe it's just like saying no to doing something that other Corps members want to do or your friends want to do when you hang out or something like that, but just like not being able to say no, so that way you can recognize what your needs are and kind of put yourself first. And so that's the biggest piece of advice I could offer.
Thanks, y'all. Yeah, I would also add, like, I think this was like shared somewhere with the incoming Corps, or at least like a team space to do so. But I think like whenever I was going through a challenge, sometimes I would think like, oh, the finding out like where, like how to download the app and like enter the code to get access, that seemed overwhelming. And so I would do some more like soothing activities instead. So my tip is like, when you like start service and like you're like, that's a great time to like download the 10% Happier app, like download those subscriptions that you do have access to, and just like navigate how to explore those, so that when you are faced with the challenge, like you already know how to access that support, like because you've already like gone through the motions and through those instructions. To me, that feels like that's like a maintenance and just kind of like preparing yourself in case like for when those inevitable challenges like do arise, so that you're kind of like paving the way for yourself, if that makes sense. All right, we have some more awesome questions coming from the Q&A. We do have a question that came in from Slido from someone who might not have been able to make it. And their question is, what have been the most helpful mental health resources, either from City Year or from the local area? I know we've expanded on our resources since like our staff members have served. So if you want to kick us off, Ava, go for it. But what do y'all think?
So I think the most helpful resource that City Year provides is that we can take COVID days, like COVID time off for mental health days. You know, having an organization that lets you take days off for mental health really speaks volumes to me. And then I think the most helpful like kind of community resource is just having family in the area. I'm from Los Angeles, and being able to, rely on my family after a hard day of service, somebody who I can rely on to help me clean up my apartment or take me out to lunch or whatever it may be is really nice.
Yeah, I remember when I served, we had a free subscription to Headspace, the meditation app, and that was expanded, changed to 10% Happier. I sound like a spokesperson for this app at this point, but meditation was something that I tried out during service, and it did like take a couple of tries to actually find a practice like that worked for me. Like, do I want someone speaking calm things, or do I want like a silent meditation, like something to calm me down? And staff also have access to these mental health resources. So I've particularly enjoyed the like sleep meditations, because like Mary, I'm also a night owl and need to work on that practice of making sure I'm getting enough sleep. That's been helpful for me. Yeah. Anything else to add, panelists?
Like Polly said, there's been a lot of things added. And like I said, I did take advantage of a lot of the resources when I was serving. But I think something that I think would help me now if I was serving now is definitely like a Talkspace, which is like a text therapy, and there's also, they added like video sessions twice a month if you want those. But it's just like, it's very different because it's not like a scheduled time where you like go in and talk to someone. It's like, if something happened in that moment, you can just like text them and be like, oh my God, this just happened. And like, basically just like talk out whatever it is you want to, or type out whatever it is you want to type out. And your therapist will like check in like once a day and respond to those things and like help you work through those things, or give you resources like, hey, like it sounds like you're going through this, like here's a specific like cognitive behavioral practice that you can like do, a self-guided thing that is going to support with like dealing with those negative emotions. And also just like EAP, which is the Employee Assistance Program, which provides 6 also like counseling sessions per concern. So if you're just like feeling like your anxiety is really peaking and you need support with that, you can get 6, like, I think, I'm not sure if they're fully in person now, but like face-to-face sessions, whether it's virtual or in person, with a therapist to kind of support you through that. It is 6 sessions per concern. So like if at the beginning of the year you're having a lot of anxiety and later you're like dealing through with burnout, that's like another 6 sessions that they can support you with. So yeah, just like at any point throughout the year, you do have like therapy options available to you if that's something that is helpful. Meditation, I also haven't been able to get into, but it's definitely something I'm continuously trying, because I know a lot of people benefit from it. But yeah, I would say those are like the things that I think would be most beneficial if I was in the Corps now.
We do have a couple more questions in the chat that I want to make sure we get to before our time is up. Are you all cool with moving forward? Okay. Right, so honing in on the challenges that Corps members face. One question is, what kind of challenges make this experience most difficult? Great question.
I can go first for this one. I think the biggest challenge is maybe not having students respond, like I said earlier, to academic coaching sessions or social emotional development in the way that you want. It doesn't always happen, and that can feel kind of defeating, especially when you've created this session for them. You want them to succeed. You feel kind of the emotional investment in them. I think another challenge is just like working long hours where you have to be constantly on in front of your students. And like, kind of by on, I mean, you can't be zoning out. You have to be in a positive mood all the time, even maybe when you're having a bad day. That can be challenging.
Yeah, I think, Ava, you're even touching on like sometimes the expectations that we have for ourselves are like so high, and we have like that inner, maybe like an inner critical voice of like thinking we need to be like perfect and like a certain level of like, being a professional, knowing that we are like around like our students and our partner teachers and communities. So it is tricky to balance that, right? Yeah, any other thoughts from our panelists about challenges that you found most difficult during service?
Yeah, I think just the students, like I said, I think high school was the toughest for me. In middle school, it was a little bit different, but yeah, I think just some defeating moments, those can make things really challenging, because it's like, I came here to, volunteer a year of service to like support students, and sometimes they might not be ready to be helped or don't want to be helped in that moment, and that can be really difficult. Another thing I would say is sometimes the team, sometimes you just have to really like collaborate and work together to like put on events or just like do like team, like school-wide projects and things like that. And obviously, just like in school, like when certain people aren't pulling their weight, like that can also make like working on a team and also just service in general a little bit challenging. And I think that's when you really have to bring in like communicating and clarifying expectations and really aligning and everyone being on the same page to prevent, like, we don't want tensions on a team, because that's your team, like you're working with them all year. And I feel like generally teams like form really great relationships even after service. But yeah, I think those can also be some pain points. But and on the rare instances, sometimes partner teachers can also pose some challenges if sometimes it's difficult to pull out a student if they're like, no, like they can't miss class today. Understandable. But also like there's other tutoring things that need to be done. Or sometimes if you can't convince a student to come to after school program when like they really should. Yeah, just like all those little things that could just sometimes build up and be challenges throughout the year.
Yeah, that's definitely something I was going to touch on, was like the partner teachers and the team. But I think ultimately one of the things that's one of the more challenging, but also you look back and are thankful for, is like working with so many people, but all of them kind of having very different work styles. And so I think in the year itself, that can be a little challenging, but looking back, like now being 5-6 years after I've done City Year, it's probably been one of the most helpful things to me, just because your team is coming from very different backgrounds, very different work styles, and you're trying to learn how to communicate and collaborate with all of the difference that exists there, as well as your partner teachers too, that are coming from different ways that they work and running their classroom. And I remember my partner teacher, one of them sometimes would randomly just like change up the lesson for the day, and I'm a planner. And so I just remember like being prepared, like this is what we're going to do today. And then I'd walk in the class and she would just be like, hey, I'm going to change things up, and we're going to go back on this, and we're going to switch things up. And so just learning how to like be able to be flexible and adaptable with that sometimes can be frustrating in the moment. But like I said, I look back and I'm like, this has actually been really helpful to me in the long run. And I think too, just kind of like reiterating just those moments of like kind of self-defeat, working with students, and like maybe you're not getting something, or there were times I definitely had to stop in the middle of a session because I was like, wait, I messed myself up, or somehow I'm not understanding this math that's happening because there's too many letters, and I have to pause for a second and go back and like take a moment before I can finish working with my students. And so I feel kind of like lesser than in that moment because I'm supposed to be helping them, and then I'm getting mixed up myself. And so I think those moments can be challenging, but just like learning to work through it, giving yourself grace, as Ava mentioned earlier in this session, and just like thinking you're not perfect, you're still a human being, and like giving yourself and your students space to like still be people as you're kind of going throughout the year.
For sure. Yeah, I think some of our greatest challenges do end up being like opportunities to like develop a skill like relationship building. And that's like, as challenges are going to arise day to day, that's something that like your teammates and your program manager could like work with you on, so that like those challenges do turn into like opportunities and later strengths as you continue your service year. I think a great question that we might even close out on if we don't get any more is, what do core members say keeps them going? I think I know the answer, but I'll turn it over to y'all.
Can I go last? I'm in school and the principal's making a PA announcement.
Thanks, Ava. For sure.
I can start off, which I'm sure we're probably all going to say the same thing, but ultimately it's the students. Like that's what I think we hear most from alumni. That's how I felt as a core member, how I still feel now, why I'm in the position that I'm in now. And so ultimately, yeah, it's the students. Like you're doing the work for the students, being able to build those relationships. I often think now back on like specific days when I'm in this role and just think about like a moment I had with a student, and I'll message them and check in with them, but they like still keep you going after time has passed, and ultimately just kind of end up being, I guess, your biggest motivator, your biggest takeaway, even though sometimes they irritate you and they don't show up to class and they decide that they don't want to work on a session or whatever the case may be. I think ultimately you share some really good, honest, like vulnerable, exciting, happy moments with your students too. And those are the moments that kind of keep you going. The moments that they say really nice things, or they draw like you're awesome on a piece of paper with a really bad stick figure. You know, it's like those moments that kind of just that really keep you motivated and going.
Yeah, so same answer, but to expand on it a little bit more, yeah, I think definitely the students, and I can just share like a personal, like more or less personal experience. When I was at the high school, like I've kind of touched on, I had a very challenging year, mostly because I really couldn't get students to come to ELT sometimes. They were just like really against like going to class, like trying to get their grades up. And I feel like at the end of the year with like just not with all my students, but with like one student in particular, I really did feel defeated. Like I had created a really great relationship with him and like we were able to have great conversations, but just like the academic factor, he just like was not in it. And at the end of the year, I did feel like a little defeated. And 3 years later, he I still like kind of keep in touch with him just like once or two times a year, just like to check in. And he like made up all the classes he failed. He like started a special program like again to like make up classes, started getting like A's and B's when he failed his entire like freshman year. And now he's going to college and just like thinking at like who he was when I was like helping him to like who he is now, it's just like mind blowing to see that. And like when I check in on him and like this isn't like to my own horn, but he was just like a lot of it was because of like the mentorship that I was able to provide to him, even though he didn't act on it in the moment. I think a lot of like the words and just like how much I cared about him like stuck with him, and he just like did tell me, he's like, I wouldn't have been able to like get to this point without you, miss. And I feel like going back to one of the like the previous question, another one of the biggest challenges is like sometimes you don't see the impact you're making in the moment. Sometimes it comes way later, and like this is one of those cases where like it broke my heart to like have left like that year without having, I felt like I didn't help him very much academically, but obviously like the relationship and the bond we built like really stuck with him, and like that really helped him succeed in the long run. And so, yeah, I would definitely say like students keep you going, like you really are making a difference. And even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment, like things that you do and your actions really stick with people, especially our young people. Like they're very impressionable, and they will remember who made them feel valued and appreciated, and who believed in them, who really believed in their potential. So yeah, I would say that's what kept me going.
Yeah, I would echo everything you guys have said. Definitely my students keep me going. You know, you really do form a tight bond with them. Another thing, though, I think that has not been mentioned that is honestly keeping me going is you get a huge scholarship after city year is over. And I'm going to college next year. I need that scholarship. And I'm looking forward to using it and telling my students about college and, you know, hopefully keeping in contact with them and motivating them to follow a similar path.
Yeah, benefits all around. Thanks y'all for sharing. I remember from my core year, I'm trying to remember the exact timeline. I remember like a day felt like a week felt like a month, and then a month felt like a day somehow. So their service year, I mean, I'm sure it doesn't feel like it in the moment, Ava. It's like you're kind of in the home stretch, but not quite there. So this can often feel like crunch time. However, I guess from our perspective, like it's going to be over soon. 11 months, like it does end eventually, and so we hope that folks build those relationships and do what they can in the time that they're serving. And as Mary said, like you're not always going to see the impact. Like sometimes it just is going to come later down the line. Okay, do we have any other questions for our panelists from our attendees? I haven't seen anything else in the chat, but I'll go ahead and just pause for a few minutes just to see if anything else comes in. Okay, that was more like a few seconds than a few minutes, but we can continue this conversation in Slack if folks want to keep talking or want to hear from staff or core members. I can definitely follow up if you do have other questions. Okay, I want to say thank you so much to our panelists. Ava, you've been doing great. Please power through your final months of service and get that scholarship for college. Thank you, Kiana and Mary, for taking time out of your busy schedules to come and chat with our core members. And thank you, attendees, for being here. I hope you found our perspectives and experiences valuable as you think about your upcoming service year. Next month, we are going to focus on budgeting, all things living on the stipend, and you will have your first set of hiring tasks in Workday. So keep an eye out for the April newsletter. That should be coming in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, thanks again for joining. Thanks everyone for coming. And I hope everyone has a lovely weekend. Take care, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a nice weekend.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And Molly, if you ever want to pull me into any of those Slacks, if people have questions that I can answer, let me know.
For sure.
Bye. Bye.